Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar, The Road to Zero Emission Smart Mobility. My name is Edwin Koot, I'm the CEO and founder of Solarplaza, and I'm very happy to moderate this session for you and with some very nice experts. Let's do a brief introduction about the webinar, about the speakers, and then let's take it ahead. First of all, this is the overview. We have this webinar as part of a series of webinars about the topic of EV and PV. There's a webinar coming up next week and the week after, so stay tuned. We'll keep up that slide. We'll bring up the slide at the end of the session as well. So if you want to register for the other webinars, feel free to do it. These are free webinars on very interesting topics. I'd like to see you back again. A little bit about Solarplaza, a company I founded in 2004. We have done a lot of events. We're touching the 200th event next year. All over the globe. Very proud to have established a network of more than 60,000 people across the globe, mostly on PV, but we're also growing into the topic of EV, battery storage, etc. Because in my perception, in my belief, everything is coming together in the transition that we are experiencing right now, the energy transition. As Solarplaza, we're not only organizing events, we also have founded a consultancy company for more one-on-one personalized matchmaking and consultancy, more related to project development and investments. And we founded a foundation a couple of years ago to do more good for the people that are less privileged in this world. So part of our profits go to interesting projects in developing countries. Some practical notes. If you want to ask a question to the speakers or to me or to the audience in general, you can do that through the question box on the right side. You have in your menu a question box and you can type it in. And my colleague will collect all the questions and we will try to post them and share them with the speakers after each presentation and at the end of the session of all three speakers. Technical issues, if you have any problems, also you can address this in this question box. For your information, if you want to share the slides and the recordings, this presentation will be, this webinar will be recorded and the slides will be made available for you. So afterwards you can share it with people and review the interesting content of this webinar. You will receive an email about this recordings and the slides within 1 or 2 days. Good. The agenda, we'll start with a presentation by Graham Evans, and then Annabel van Zanten and Hannah van Sembeek is going to close it. I will introduce them later on to you in more depth. So, and we'll have time for Q&A, 1 or 2 short questions after each presentation, and at the end, hopefully we'll still have some time left for other questions. First speaker, but before we go to Graham, let's do a little poll question and see who's in the room, what kind of audience we're dealing with today, and to understand and see a little bit about your background. So you can see now a Slido question or a question, quick poll question. So please share with us what is the background of our participants. Are you active in the PV business or coming from the EV and charging business? Are you a corporate or interested in the topic in general, or is there another background that is relevant? Let's see. I'll give you a few more seconds to do your voting and see and get used to the system. Equally divided, PV people, EV charging people, corporates, and yeah, 1 or more from other. Very interesting to learn, of course, who is that and what is the background. But maybe we can have you can raise a question later on and introduce yourself. Good. Let's go ahead with the first speaker. He's Director of Supply Chain and Technology Group at S&P Global. He leads and manages the global research practice for propulsion, battery charging, and thermal systems, component forecasting. 10 years of experience in powertrain development and noise, vibration, harnesses, and harshness. Sorry, but difficult titles, Graham. Having previously worked in Ricardo, Bentley Motors, and Jaguar and Land Rover. That sounds more familiar to a lot of people. Joined IHS Markit, now part of S&P Global in 2016. Graduated with a master's degree in automotive engineering from Loughborough University. Chartered member of the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. Welcome, Graham Evans. Graham, welcome.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you for the kind introduction. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. And I now hope the ability to start cycling through the slides. So yeah, it's my pleasure to give a kind of, I see my role here to give something of an overview, a bit of global context. We're a data company. We provide data and insights to our client base around some of these strategic topics. I think we're going to start with a poll question devised by myself. So regarding our forecasts, I guess it's your forecast of our forecast to say, when do you expect production of plug-in light passenger vehicles to surpass that of non-plug-in passenger vehicles globally? So yeah, based on your thoughts of when this will occur, so this is say global production of any vehicle that can be externally charged. When do we think that's going to surpass the portion that can't be externally charged? So please make your selection, and then I'll discuss a little bit the results. All right, so some relatively short time frames, some earlier time frame. Okay, fantastic. So we have a bit of a split. So 30% of the audience saying relatively soon, 2027. Some say even beyond 2033. Okay, so yeah, I guess a divide in opinion. So the answer from our forecast is actually 2031 on the global scale. So it's at that point that we see this global intersection between EV uptake and, let's say, internal combustion engine decline. Perhaps a bit of context as well that for Europe specifically, that's 2028. So we expect that speed of transition to happen just a bit quicker in Europe for all of the kind of reasons that we're starting to get familiar with from the regulatory news, from the internal combustion engine bans that we are starting to see come into place in certain European countries, etc. So certainly a faster trajectory of change. Okay, so as I start to cycle through the slides now, so just I'd like to give a brief introduction to S&P Global Mobility, what we do, a little bit about my team, and then effectively 3 sections. First talking a little bit about our research in terms of the consumer. We go out to speak to consumers and try and understand their sentiments towards electric vehicle charging. And then just to split out really the technology aspects in terms of both the vehicle side, the technology on the vehicle that facilitates charging, and then on the infrastructure side. So how do we see the rollout of charging stations to date in the different domains, be it domestic, be it public, be it semi-public. We'll go into those definitions shortly. And then just a few summary reflections really before the ladies dive into some of the specifics on the Netherlands and some of the interesting work that's going on there. So, as I say, by way of introduction, obviously we've gone through a little bit about me, and as I say, that important perhaps point I would say is IHS Markit, many of you are familiar with, merged with S&P Global in late February, March this year. So we are now S&P Global Mobility. S&P Global Mobility is one of 6 divisions there within S&P Global, and so we are effectively building upon the foundations of the automotive division of IHS Markit, but at the same time bringing together the multitude of expertise across these different divisions to have a more holistic view on the mobility challenges moving forward. So it's a really exciting time for us as we get stuck into the benefits that this merger can bring. Just a little bit about my team specifically. So as Edwin mentioned in the introduction, I look after 4 domains within the supply chain technology team: battery, charging, propulsion, and thermal management. So lucky for me, sat on some of the really hot industry topics, but my group is also covering a number of other interesting areas around autonomy, the connected vehicle, conventional vehicle domains that are evolving, like lighting, like interior systems. So we're fundamentally a team of analysts, or as I like to call us sometimes, frustrated engineers. People who are kind of interested in the technical aspects of these industry transitions, but also with a nod to the bigger picture. Interested in the bigger picture. So a lot of our research, our insights that we gather, we're supported by this team of data scientists, data architects who help facilitate the platforms that we deliver our insights through. We're in 18 offices around the globe, so we have analysts in the key automotive strategic locations who can undertake the research and help us build, maintain, and evolve this plethora of data that we gather and that we deliver to our clients. So getting stuck into the topic a little bit then, and just, give perhaps an overview of where we are in terms of EV and charging station deployment now, and then where we see see things going. So if we take it in terms, this is global production in the year of 2021. So if you like, the last year of kind of actuals that we have. So globally, 8% of vehicles produced in 2021 were either battery electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, so it can be externally charged. In terms of the associated charging infrastructure rollout to support these vehicles, of course, the vast majority of vehicles that get sold, they come with a cable, so they're provided with some kind of cable or cord set as part of the vehicle purchase. So the cumulative number of cord sets or cables now is somewhere in the region of 30 million from all of the vehicles produced to date. And we'll talk about things in terms of not just vehicles produced annually, but what we call the vehicle park. So how many vehicles are roaming the streets now, how many vehicles in operation. And therefore that is, of course, a critical metric when we're trying to assess charging infrastructure needs. We see that about 5.5 million domestic wall boxes have been installed to date. So somewhere just under half of all of those EVs sold have also perhaps installed the domestic solution at home to be able to charge at home. And we'll talk a little bit about how we expect that will evolve over time. Somewhere in the region of 1 million AC public, or what we might term semi-public, charging stations have been installed. Semi-public is anything with a restriction on use or access. So maybe it's, you have to purchase something in order to access the service. Maybe it's at a shopping mall or a cinema where you have to go and watch the movie in order to get access to the charging station. So about 1 million AC public and semi-public, and then obviously DC public and semi-public, less abundant in number, but of course no less crucial in terms of providing charging to users on the go. Let's flick to 2030 and see what that might look like. Of course, a huge increase. By 2030, we expect that about 48% of the vehicles produced in that year will be fully battery electric or plug-in hybrid. And of course, this leads to, by this point, the park has accumulated in size, so many more EVs and plug-in hybrids roaming the vehicle fleet around the globe. So we see about 132 million cables, cord sets by this point, about 1 in 2 taking the domestic solution, having the opportunity to charge at home, 14 million AC charging stations in the public and semi-public domains, and then 1 million DC or high power charging stations being installed. So in terms of the research process, in terms of when we gather this data, of course, we're an independent organization, we're politically neutral. We ultimately, as I sometimes say, it doesn't necessarily matter whether ICE or diesel makes a roaring comeback or EV strive. We want clients to rely on our data. In order to do that through our methodology, we go out and we speak to consumers as well in order to gather this kind of independent view on technology deployment. And we'd just like to share some of the insights around, when we go out, we speak to 8,000 consumers in 8 major automotive markets, and we ask them a number of questions around their intentions for electric and hybrid vehicle purchases. This is either intenders, people who are in the process of considering an electric vehicle, or people who already own one. So we actually saw a slight decline in sentiment towards electric vehicle adoption between 2021 and 2022, our different annual surveys. And ultimately, perhaps let's say more interest in the compromise solution of a hybrid somewhat than the full battery electric vehicle. So people are warming up to the idea of this transition. But most critically, I think it's worth discussing the reasons why people are perhaps not considering an EV or a hybrid. And that really feeds into the discussion today around, okay, we all understand that these EVs for now are more expensive. But critically, two major issues: lack of charging station availability and the time required to charge the EV. So this really, perhaps some of the early adopters to date, they've been a bit more forgiving of the electric vehicle compromises around where they're going to charge and how quickly will they charge. This next wave of consumers who are potentially looking to adopt to purchase an EV now, they're perhaps going to be less forgiving. We expect that they are going to be less tolerant of the compromises they're going to have to make in their vehicle ownership journey, and will want to see an improvement in charging time and visible station availability. Does existing charging infrastructure meet the needs of the consumer? Really important question. And again, it comes back to that point around, current owners, perhaps they embrace this EV technology, they want it to work, they get used to the compromises that perhaps have to be made, or they find a way to integrate EV into their daily life. So about 50% of current and EV and repeat EV owners say yes, the charging infrastructure is fine, it meets my needs, I can get what I need, be it domestically or in public. We see a slight decline in that sentiment for current owners versus the previous survey, but actually an increase for the repeat owners. But I think the critical point here is that, past owners of EVs, it's only around 32%, which kind of points to the fact that some of the reason for their perhaps not getting an EV again is around the charging infrastructure. But then critically, intenders, people who are thinking about buying an EV, only 24% think that the charging infrastructure is going to be sufficient. Now, no doubt, if they buy an EV and they embrace an EV, a bit like these current owners, they will perhaps get used to the infrastructure available and the compromises. But this is the battle that we have. We have to convince these intenders that the charging infrastructure is sufficient. And how will we do that? Well, more of it, better quality infrastructure, and shorter recharge times. It's inevitably going to be part of the solution. We also have to think about some of the new technologies coming to market and ask our consumers, if my team go out there and they perform some primary research interviews, speak with 20 people in the industry about vehicle-to-grid technology, no doubt we'll get some fairly positive sentiments. These are companies who are working on the technology, looking to implement it. So, of course, we need to balance this with the perspective of the consumer, right? If a consumer is not interested in the technology, of course, it's not necessarily going to take off. And it's important to gather the perception from the consumers of new technologies like vehicle-to-grid. And what we see is, obviously, even this is amongst, obviously, people intending to buy an EV and people who currently own an EV, that actually relatively little vehicle-to-grid awareness in terms of what it involves, whether they would be willing to adopt it. But actually, perhaps on the right side, their willingness to implement the technology and obviously the potential cost saving that can come with vehicle-to-grid. You plug in, you give a little bit of energy back to the grid when your EV is fully charged, or if you're happy to have your EV only 80% charged, and you get a small financial return from that top 20%, giving that back to the grid. The response from the consumers is actually, any cost saving in there would help. 42% of people saying that's absolutely fine. Some people looking for a kind of a minimum amount that they might gain from participating in vehicle-to-grid. But ultimately, the sentiment towards the technology is good. It's just not that many people know about it yet and are really specifically aware of what it might entail. So it's these types of insights that we can glean in detail from our consumer survey. Okay, next up, I wanted to touch upon some of the key technologies that we're interested in on the vehicle side, and also just highlight the fact that, of course, as part of the charging experience, having the infrastructure there in place is an important aspect. But I think a lot of consumers don't often realize when they do plug in, that what might restrict the ability of the vehicle to charge quickly is not necessarily on the infrastructure side. It could be some kind of restriction within the battery management system of the vehicle, and of course the charging power that the vehicle can receive. One of the most probably potentially disruptive charging technologies that could come about would be the battery swapping technology. So being pioneered in China, certainly the likes of NIO, certainly amongst the companies that are trying to look to use this as a unique selling point, a bit like Tesla have done with the supercharger network. If you buy a NIO in China, you have access to the NIO battery swapping facilities. The idea that you can swap out your depleted battery for a fully charged battery in less than 5 minutes gives an experience perhaps similar in time frame to the gasoline refueling experience. And really what we see is this increase in battery swapping, and a number of brands, number of vehicles in China who are going to deploy battery swapping. And of course, we see this coming to Europe, the likes of NIO interested in coming to Europe, and a number of these brands looking, with global ambitions, looking to move to Europe and the US and sell their vehicles there. So this is a significant increase in let's say, swapping capable vehicles. We don't have the legislation here in Europe to align the OEMs in order to produce like a common battery standard that would facilitate swapping. But if this can be done anywhere, it can be done in China, and that's the route that they're pursuing. On the wireless side, certainly the wireless charging technology for EVs has been kind of around for a while. It's achieving a level of maturity. Lots of tier one supplier interest in adopting this and moving it forward. Lots of investment in the industry. Probably this is something that certainly we would see a level of adoption in the premium segment first, as the chart on the right side implies, and also that we would start to see deployment initially in Japan, Korea, and China before a later adoption into Europe in the latter part of this decade and into next decade. Probably one of the biggest challenges to wireless charging as a technology is the incumbent. The plug got there first, effectively. The industry has somewhat aligned on plug-in technology, but of course, the wireless charging technology really lends itself well, especially to things like the taxi application or further down the track. Mobility fleet solutions like the idea of a rechargeable Uber that doesn't need to be plugged in. It's autonomous. Perhaps it can take a power snack on a wireless charging pad that's integrated around the urban environment. So lots of possibilities with this technology and a significant ramp up in its deployment we expect out to 2034. Bidirectional charging, I know this is something that's going to be talked on in more detail, and obviously we mentioned about vehicle to grid earlier. We see a significant increase in the number of vehicle to grid capable vehicles that are going to be deployed in the market between now and 2030, aligned with European regulation on this to almost mandate a degree of V2G capability in order to reduce the impact on the electricity grid. So yeah, significant ramp up and a significant number of OEMs, 92 OEMs by 2030. It's basically the vast majority of car companies are going to be adopting this technology by then. I actually missed out a divider slide here. This was my final section around the infrastructure deployed, and just wanted to show some of the, if you like, the actuals as we see them now, and then the forecast ramp up in charging station installation by 2030. Somewhat the devil is in the detail here in terms of segmenting by power, by AC, DC, etc. But just to give a view on where things are so far, and you can see the Netherlands there in yellow. Effectively, despite the Netherlands being a comparatively small European country, a very significant amount of charging station uptake so far, predominantly AC. We see around 500,000 stations there installed. But then, of course, we expect this aggressive ramp up in Germany, in the United Kingdom, based on some of the plans that have been put in place, the government initiatives, the funding that's been made available to promote charging station rollouts. I probably would like to share this slide, really comparing a few of the early adopting countries in terms of charging station, in terms of electric vehicle adoption and the charging station deployment that they've done. There's quite a nice metric of vehicles per charger. And how we think this will evolve out to 2030. So again, the concept of the vehicle park, the vehicles in the fleet, how many vehicles are in the fleet and how many vehicles do we expect will be in the fleet based on our forecasts versus the number of stations. And we start to align on this metric of somewhere around 30 vehicles per station in the public domain has been a good number. If there's more than 30 vehicles per station, we're going to see shortages. If there's less than 30 vehicles per station, then we're probably going to see underused charging stations or a bit of an excess of capacity, challenging the business model. So we see already the Netherlands doing a really good job. They're ahead, in terms of the deployment. A large number, very few vehicles per station at the moment. So this is good. We expect this to continue, bearing in mind take a forward-looking view of some of the investments that have been made in these respective countries. And we see here from Norway the fact that obviously there was this big ramp up in electric vehicle adoption, and very quickly they had to catch up in terms of the number of stations that they installed. I'm going to be mindful of time and just go through a few summary reflections here. I think this is the critical one. I pulled this data from a forum here on the left side, and it doesn't really matter which EV it's from, but you could probably guess. And it's showing, you plug into a DC charging station and you see the amount of power that you can receive over the charging duration. And actually what we find is we get a very quick peak power up to about 180 kilowatts, and very quickly the peak power the vehicle can receive is ramping down. So the state of charge is creeping up there, but it's kind of an arc. It's not going to keep on charging as quickly as it started. Actually, what we really want is what we see on the right side there, which is kind of analogous to the gasoline refueling process. Let's say a linear charge, high power over the duration of the time that you're plugged in. And this is really what the industry is looking to move towards in terms of improved charging technology, higher powers, and batteries that are capable of receiving this power. Just a summary of perhaps some of the compromised solutions that we see. This has become something of a hobby of mine to gather images of what's happening in the public domain. We see some quite messy kind of compromised solutions at the moment in terms of how people are charging, the way in which the cables are positioned. Some of these legal, some of them not legal, and of course, we have there in China some wired up directly to the mains, not ideal. I think some of the we see this wider issue of availability, reliability, and speed. Some users have been very considerate and tolerant so far, but this probably isn't the case moving forward. We need better integrated solutions. So quick summary reflection. Edwin's going to hurry me up here, and I'll be super quick to finish. We see this massive increase in charging capable vehicles coming. We didn't touch on medium heavy. Another 400,000 medium heavy duty vehicles we expect will have a unique charging demands, higher power charging required, bigger batteries. DC is critical, but AC remains the most abundant medium. We can't have DC charging everywhere. It'll be too expensive, too difficult to implement. The implications on the power grid will be massive. Some disruptive technologies around, certainly. The Netherlands has done a really good job as a first mover with predominantly AC charging, but certainly charges per EV on a very good metric. But of course, more to do as the vehicle park increases in size. Yeah, we have lots of data. We're always happy to talk and happy to share our perspectives on these issues. Thank you, Edwin.
All right, thanks, Graham. That's a lot of valuable information in a short amount of time. Very nice overview of what's happening around the globe as well. And one of the slides I missed the Netherlands, but we can talk about that data later. I was just wondering about, what could be the impact of improving battery technology on EVs charging infrastructure?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, obviously we hear lots of discussions around technologies like solid state batteries, which of course will in principle facilitate faster charging. They will be able to receive the power from the grid at a much higher rate. I think also the critical aspect of the battery capacity is important as well. The average battery capacity of vehicles is creeping up, so effectively the energy density in that given size is increasing. We pack more power into the battery itself. This also comes with technologies like cell to pack. You remove some of the other furniture within that battery pack, therefore to achieve a higher density. So effectively more energy in the battery means a longer range. Being able to recharge more quickly with something like solid state in, let's say, 5 to 10 years time, probably nearer 10, this is going to give us the opportunity to have longer range, faster charging, and a more seamless experience.
Yeah, I was also surprised in a way by your stats of these are private customer survey responses, right? That not everybody is reconsidering an EV car after having one right now. My personal experience, I'm driving electric for 6 years, and I would never buy a combustion engine anymore, just for the simple reason that my maintenance costs are almost zero. I don't hear that much. Everybody's talking about charging and charging infrastructure, but I don't have a problem. If you have a charging pole at home, it's very convenient. But the maintenance cost, it's barely taken into the discussion, it seems, and it's a huge plus.
It absolutely is, and there's no getting away from the fact that EVs are fundamentally simpler, right? Okay, they're more expensive at the moment. A lot of this is due to economies of scale, challenges around certain aspects of the technology, but fundamentally they're simpler. And you're right, it's going to have a significant impact on, let's say, the vehicle, maintenance and repair market further down the track. And obviously this, from a consumer point of view, can only be positive. I think that the people who have embraced an EV so far who've had the most challenges are perhaps fleet users. You know, people for whom the vehicle is a tool. It's something they need to rely. Perhaps you know, they're not on consistent routes. They have a more variable use of their vehicle. Maybe one day they have to do 200 kilometers, the next day they only do 50. You know, the reliance on public charging infrastructure and the wait time, the dwell time when they have to recharge has been the main criticism of electric vehicles to date. But certainly, you know, lots of progress being made, and I think that the rollout of charging infrastructure in major markets has certainly been is certainly accelerating at a rate that means that people will get the charging they need, providing it's reliable, providing it's cost effective, and of course it needs to be green. You know, we can't we need to deliver this through renewable and sustainable means.
Maybe we can do one quick answer, maybe a short answer from your side, Graham. There is a question coming in. Is it 30 vehicles per charging port or per charging station that you mentioned in your slide?
Yeah, well, it's per station. Yeah, it's per station. Of course, yeah, any given station might have a number of ports on it. Let's say in terms of how we define that, it would be how many vehicles could be charged simultaneously. So if there's 2 plugs on the station to facilitate 2 vehicles being charged at the same time, they will be considered separately. Of course, we have a situation where one station can have 3 plugs, but it might be, you know, only one charging event can take place at once. So that would be what we consider a station. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that short explanation. Thanks again, Graham. Stay with us. Maybe we have time at the end of the webinar to have some more questions. Let's go to the next speaker.
Thank you.
The next speaker is advisor at APPM Consultants, focused on zero-emission mobility and charging infrastructure, planning and realizing sufficient. Wait a second. Planning and realizing sufficient charging infrastructure for corporate vehicle fleets in the Netherlands, northwestern part of the Netherlands, together with municipalities, business associations, companies, and the grid operator. Works on a study that provides insights in the cost of charging logistic vehicles at company premises. Advice Rijkswaterstaat, which is a government agency in the Netherlands, responsible for all the roads and traffic, and with advice Rijkswaterstaat on the rollout of fast charging infrastructure along highways. And she's worked on charging infrastructure tenders, holds a business degree in innovation sciences. Please welcome Annabel van Zanten. Hi, Annabel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you for the extensive introduction.
Please welcome, be welcome, and you can take it ahead. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Interesting to hear what Graham just told about the way consumers view electric vehicles. I will zoom in more on whether our grid and charging infrastructure is actually ready for this EV revolution. And I will focus primarily on the Netherlands in my story. Just a short introduction about APPM, the company that I work for. It's a Dutch consultancy firm. We also have offices in Belgium and Germany. We offer consultancy services on a wide range of topics, including urban development, energy, and also electric transport, which is my focus area as well. Looking at the number of charging points in the Netherlands, Graham already gave something away in his presentation. The majority consists of domestic charges. So we see that a bit more than 325,000 charging points are installed at people's homes. It's an estimate. We don't have exact data on the number of charges, domestic charges, but we expect it to lie somewhere around this number. When we look at public charging points, which are in public space, and semi-public, so which are sometimes behind gates or in a parking garage or something, they sum up to around 106,000. And on top of that, we have 1,700 fast chargers divided over somewhat more than 900 locations in the Netherlands. So that's already quite some impressive numbers on charging infrastructure. But at the same time, the national agenda of charging infrastructure has made a calculation that in 2030 we need 1.7 million charging points to charge the approximately 1.9 million cars. So if you look at the previous numbers and you look at this number, we still have quite a long way to go with our charging infrastructure, despite our very good efforts at the moment. And that is only the charging infrastructure that we expect to need for passenger cars. This graph shows the current status of commercial electric vehicles in the Netherlands. It's plug-in hybrid, battery electric, and fuel cell all combined in one graph. What you see is that currently there are around 13,000 commercial vans, electric vans, and around 350 trucks that have an electric drivetrain. However, if you look at our national ambition, it's way bigger. From the 1st of January 2025, 30 to 40 municipalities will introduce zero-emission zones, meaning that all the vehicles entering the city center can only do this if they have a zero-emission, if they are zero emission, so either battery electric or fuel cell electric. And the aim is that in 2030 there are 250,000 electric vans and 16,000 electric trucks. So that means a big scale up in charging infrastructure, also specifically for these vehicles. And depending on the type of vehicle, they will charge in different locations. What we see for vans is that we expect them to charge mainly at company premises or in residential areas. So either they will be parked at a company, for example, overnight and charge there, or people will take them home with them and make use of either domestic chargers or public charging infrastructure in their suburbs. And a small percentage of the time, let's say 3%, they will use chargers along the way. If we then look at trucks, the picture is completely different. Well, you can imagine that they will not charge in residential areas because of their size. They will mainly charge at company premises, and 10% of the time they are expected to charge along the way. So let's say at rest areas along the highway or at truck parkings where they will stay during the night. If we zoom in on these company premises, the type of charging infrastructure that is needed is depending on the deployment of the vehicles. For example, for vans, you can expect that they will be at the company premises during the night. Let's say they stand there for 8 to 10 hours. In that case, regular charging with 11 up to 22 kilowatts can make sure that the vehicle can leave in the morning again with a charged battery. If they have a more intensive use, then you can turn to fast charging with charging capacities ranging from 150 to 350 kilowatts. Regarding trucks, the picture is again completely different. What we call fast charging for passenger cars and for vans is what we call regular charging for trucks. The batteries of trucks currently go to 500 or 600 kilowatt hours, and the energy density is expected to increase. So if we take the same time frame, 8 to 10 hours, this charging power will make sure that the trucks are charged again when they leave. Of course, here again, you can make use of fast charging up to 350 kilowatts, but they're also working on the so-called megawatt charging system, or the MCS standard. In 2024, the first trucks will appear on the road with this MCS plug. At the start of the standard, the expectation is that they can charge with 600 kilowatts, which means that within half an hour, 45 minutes, they can get back on the road. And it is expected to increase to, well, the megawatt, 1 megawatt charging of the trucks. And besides the type of charging, there are also different locations where you can charge. So this is a picture of a company which is located nearby Amsterdam. This company has decided to put charging infrastructure on their own private premises, which you can see in the left-hand corner. And the more dark blue bit highlights public space, where the municipality has placed a fast charger that everyone can use. It's expected that the ratio regular versus fast charging will be around 80 to 20%. So often the time frame during the night offers enough time to charge on a regular speed, and no fast charging is necessary. And therefore, what you see at these companies, it's interesting to see maybe you have an existing grid connection for your building. What room does it provide to maybe start small with a number of regular charges? And as you have a gradual phase in of electric vehicles in your fleet, you can also expand your charging infrastructure. And also charging at own premises, it will be cheaper than charging in public space, because there will always be a margin for a charge point operator there. Well, and this will be the main challenge that we currently have to deal with in the Netherlands. This map shows the current status with regards to the consumption of electricity. Yellow already means that you're not sure of either reinforcement of an existing grid connection or approval of a new grid connection due to grid congestion. It's mainly a problem on the medium and high voltage grid. So when you want to install fast chargers, this is what you are confronted with as a company in the Netherlands. And even in areas without grid congestion, it still asks for a timely request for a grid connection. Because if you have your vehicle and you expect the next day to have your charging infrastructure installed, it's not the way it works, unfortunately. There are lead times up to 1 or 2 years. So as a company, you really have to take this in mind when you want to electrify your fleet, that you also have to think of the charging infrastructure way ahead. Does it mean that in the Netherlands at this point we have to just wait, sit and wait until the grid operators have solved this problem? Luckily, that's not the case. There are smart solutions we can use already to start electrifying our fleet. Smart charging, of course, is a no regret, which means that you charge using renewable at times when there is renewable energy available, and you avoid charging, or you charge at somewhat lower capacity during peak hours on the grid. Also, you can use locally produced solar PV from your rooftop to, for instance, power your vehicles. And what you see on this picture is a battery, which is also a solution to get started, even if there is grid congestion in an area. Well, to sum up and to come back to the main question that I posed at the start, is our charging and grid infrastructure ready for the EV revolution? Well, I believe in the Netherlands we have one of the densest charging networks, but we have to keep the momentum going to realize sufficient charging infrastructure. You saw that the numbers that are installed right now deviate quite a lot from the 1.7 million charging points that are required on estimate in 2030. And then again, we have to add the revolution that will take place in logistics vehicles. The main challenge is grid connection, but at the same time, smart solutions offer help. So I would like to invite everyone to get started now.
All right, Annabelle, thank you very much for a very brief presentation, very insightful. Yeah, it was one of the burning questions on my mind when I saw you presenting like 1.7 million charging points, like, oh, how are we going to make this possible? Is it possible to provide the electricity to these charging points, and specifically green electricity? Because this will require a lot of megawatts of solar and wind capacity, right?
Yeah, that's true. What you see in tenders for public charging points that we organize in the Netherlands, often it is a requirement that the parties that that apply to such a tender, they provide green electricity. But yeah, still it will be a big challenge because this is not the only thing that we need green power for. There are other things that need electricity as well. Yes.
Yeah, is it like we have in normal fuels, or normal, what, let's not call them normal, but let's polluting fuels. People are fueling up across the border. Can we see this happening also with electric charging? Like you say, the challenges on the grid in the Netherlands will drive people to Germany or Belgium and charge their car over there? Or do
I
they
think
have
the
similar
opposite.
problems?
I think because of grid congestion and the challenges that we have, I think the solutions will become even more local. So I think we become more smart in terms of linking solar PV production to the actual consumption of energy for electric driving. So I think we will create way more local solutions instead of going abroad with a green electricity.
Okay, thanks. I have a question coming in from Alexander Metz, who's participating. And so when you are talking about a charge ratio of 80% regular and 20% fast charging, are you, for a delivery truck, are you talking about kilowatt hours or 80% of the charging time?
80% of the charging time, yeah. Yeah.
Good to clarify that. And do you think that companies will make their charging facilities available for others to charge, and maybe also charge them a little fee for that? Are there any business models proving that this is working?
Well, from a government perspective, you would hope that companies will start doing so because of limited space, a limited capacity in the grid. From what I hear, companies are not really open doing it because in their DNA, still this competitive side. But from a societal point of view, you would want companies to share their charging infrastructure. And I think from a business case point of view as well, if you install charging infrastructure on your own premises, your turnover will be higher if you open it up to your neighbors, for instance.
Yeah, maybe we have time at the end of the webinar to dive a little bit further into this, but thank you for now, Annabelle. And let's go over to the next speaker. Yes, she's project coordinator, smart charging and vehicle to grid at ELAT. Helps prepare grid operators for the future with electric mobility and sustainable charging. Holds a master in science in economics, and Hannah is very much a systems thinker. That's nice. Maybe we can dive into that later. Draws on her experience in the energy sector, working for energy companies, grid operators, consultancies, and the government. So a very broad experience. And she's working at the cutting edge of the energy transition. Helps adopt innovative technology and into an existing system of regulations. Regulatory framework is a very important part of this discussion. The incentives and attitudes around mobility and sustainable energy. Welcome, Hannah van Sambeek. Hannah, can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that
starting with a poll question. Yes, Hannah, we're starting with a poll question. Good, perfect. And then you can take it away. You're still with us, Hannah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Am I supposed to read the question?
Yeah, I can help you as well. No problem.
I'm asking you to guess what percentage of time a car is parked on average. So if that is less than 20%, 20 to 50, 50 to 90, or 90 to 95%. And the results are in the majority thinks 90 to 95, and some also 50 to 90. Well, I'm not going to tell you what the answer is because it will come in my presentation. But I'll start by saying who I am and who I work for. ELAT NL. We are didn't come through. Knowledge and Innovation Center, funded by the Dutch grid operators. So we test and research smart and sustainable charging of electric vehicles. We also have a test lab where we test both vehicles and charging stations that they're working properly, that they can communicate with each other, and also what the impact is on the grid. And what I want to talk to you about today is unlocking the grid flexibility potential of EVs, because I work in the smart charging team. So I want to mention shortly the EV's role in the energy transition, and I'll try to keep that short considering the time, and also show you a few projects that we have in the Netherlands that demonstrate the market readiness of smart charging and bidirectional charging. So if you work in the energy world, you probably recognize this. The images are in Dutch, but on the left-hand side, the blue line is the electricity consumption of households, which we know have a small peak in the evening and a bigger one in the afternoon. And cars in the yellow-green line, they also have a peak in the morning and an even bigger peak in the afternoon. And if we combine them on the right-hand side, in the blue line, that's the combined electricity demand, you can see that the peaks of demand are completely opposite, actually, to when solar power is generated. But of course, everybody has said today that we want to match solar power and the demand, and we can using smart charging. And then to go to the question, oh, that slide was now. Oh, sorry, no, that will come. Never mind. Oh, can we go back one slide? Thank you. So combining solar and combining the solar generation with the use of electric cars was actually the vision that made me want to go into the EV world. I heard this the first time already in 2017. People were talking about this, charging from the sun, and then in the evening using that energy that you have in your cars to feed into your house in the evening, or even into events like concerts, and that gives resilience to our energy system if we can use cars as batteries on wheels. And with the future of autonomous cars, they could even transport the energy to where it's needed. And that is what makes me excited. It was talked about 5 years ago, but it is starting to become reality now. And we're seeing across Europe that grid congestion is a problem. So we need to store energy when it is produced, or need to use it when it is produced. And we need to use it smart. In the Netherlands, we've already done several projects. ELAD has been involved in several projects where we're testing the technology, we're researching grid impact, but also the human behavior and the user impact. So I want to show you a few of those examples today. And then coming back to the question, the poll question, what percentage of time is the car parked? The answer is 95%. Some research even suggests that it could be as big as 97% of time a car is parked. So most of the time a car is parked. Well, that's great news, because that means that we can really use the battery capacity of those cars. And making smart charging a standard. So when we're talking about smart charging, we usually talk about 3 different forms. The user can choose what's important to them. Is that to charge renewable energy? So when electricity is abundant, is it charging at low cost? Or is it charging more grid friendly, so to not overload local grids? And often these 3 aspects go hand in hand. And in the projects that we have done, we've also seen that it can be done with minimal discomfort for the driver, and most users are very positive towards smart charging. But it is also a question of habits. So it needs to require a minimal or no effort. And the user also wants to have the option to opt out and charge as fast as possible for the few situations when that's needed. But the good news is that they almost never use that opt-out. They want to have it available as a sense of having control, but it's not used. Now, another important point is standardization, because you don't want to be locked into one system. And in the Netherlands, we've agreed that public chargers should all be smart charging ready. And to help that process, we set up smart charging requirements, and they are also available in English. So if that's something that's relevant for you, please have a look at that. And what we're working on right now is that a national program is being set up. It's called Slim Laden voor iedereen, or in English, Smart Charging for Everyone, where we want to fast track the adoption of smart charging. and the aim is that 70% of charging will be smart in 2025. So one of the projects that are focusing on smart charging is Flex Power. It is a project done in Amsterdam where they used different methods and I think, considering the time, I will not go into all the details here, but they gave charge stations a base capacity that was lower than the technical capacity. They then clustered the charging stations because charging stations are not active, not all of them are active at the same time. So then giving the capacity to the ones that are used. And then additionally, they added free capacity when possible. So it was only really during the peak moments. You can see that in this third graph here, that only when there's a peak moment in demand, the charging stations only had the base capacity, whereas most of the time they had extra free capacity available, which meant that they can even charge faster than before. And using these principles, it resulted in the ability to put down 3 to 4 times as many charging stations in a grid that was considered already full. Now, if you want to know more about the details, I recommend you looking at Flex Power. Today, the report was released, and there's also a web talk from ELAD that you can find that is in Dutch. And next week, a colleague of mine is talking about this at an event in Arnhem called Road to Decarbonization. So if you want to know more of the details of Flex Power. But I'd like to tell you a bit more about vehicle to grid as well. Oh, sorry, I clicked twice. Could you go back a slide again? So this is an image of the largest bi-directional parking lot in the world. It has 260 chargers and is ready for 450. It has battery storage, a PV solar roof, and something called Grid Shield that I will tell you about in a minute. And this location is a living lab in the project we have called Smooth EMS with Grid Shield. So here, this is the same parking garage, and you can see the office location behind it, the white one. It's ASR in Utrecht. And what they're doing is that they're combining this parking garage with an EMS that's balanced the energy use of the entire office building. And currently they have about 100, they have up to 100 charging stations per day. But obviously they're future-proof. So in the future, when more of their employees will have electric cars and their entire lease fleet will be electric, they have the capability to charge all of them, and also using that to balance their electricity use. And an office location like this is really ideal for smart charging, because you have the employee population, you have known information about the people that are parking. It is daytime charging, so they can charge from the solar panels that you have. It also means that you can mitigate loads away from residential areas, and it really has a big peak reduction potential. This location, we're also developing something called Grid Shield, which is a new innovation that helps prevent power outages and damage to grid infrastructure. So when a transformer on the low voltage grid is at risk of overloading, it sends a signal to local charging stations and their capacity is temporarily lowered. If you want to know more about that, you can visit the website or search for Smooth EMS with Grid Shield. This is a new innovation that is being developed and tested now. So another living lab that we have within the project Smooth EMS with Grid Shield is the living lab at University Twente. And they are looking into algorithms for smart charging, but they're also looking at human behavior. And one of the things they're doing is developing an app. So you can see in this app here, oh, sorry, I clicked again instead of just moving my mouse. I'm going a little bit back and forth between 2 windows. The users can choose if they want fast charging or if they want solar charging, and they put in when they are expected to leave and the desired energy they want, and gets a charging profile based on that. And you can see if you want to charge fast, the price is considerably higher than if you charge on the solar production, but also the CO2 is a lot higher. So this is part of the project researching how this would work, what algorithms would work. And the technology is here. It is being developed. So the last thing I want to say before my key takeaway is to tell you that we are also working on a European project. ELAD is the leading partner in a European consortium with 29 project partners to align regulation and standards in the EU on smart charging in vehicle to X. And we started in June, and the first report is coming up at the end of this year. And this is exciting, because this means that the standards are going to be out there, and the adoption can just go faster, because this is I believe that this is needed for a future energy system, because the energy landscape is changing. It used to be a one-way system where we had central production that was sent out through the grid to an end customer, but nowadays the system is a lot more complex. It is a two-way system where households are also becoming producers and consumers, and it is becoming a lot more decentralized, which means that we need to do locally balancing of these clusters. That is important, and EVs will play a really important role in balancing this system. And I hope that in the 10 to 12 minutes that I had, I've shown you that this technology is already out there. Yes, there are still things that need to be done, and there are definitely still things that need to be done with regulation, but it is coming, and it works.
That's a nice conclusion. Thank you very much, Hannah. That was immediately a question, just to be sure. If you're talking about smart charging, is that by definition also mean bi-directional, so ready for vehicle to grid?
No, smart charging is like I said, it could be based on different principles, but it is just changing when you charge based on your goal. So either using renewable, putting the renewable electricity in the car when it is available, or charging it when the prices are low. And quite often that coincides, not always, but almost always. So smart charging is basically just changing when you use it, changing the demand.
If diving a little bit deeper into vehicle to grid, is there more examples of projects that are ready for vehicle to grid?
Yes, they are. So one of the project partners in scale is Utrecht, because they want to become the first bi-directional region in the world. So the last thing I heard is, I believe they have 500 vehicle to grid AC charging stations, and there is a fleet of shared cars from We Drive Solar. I believe there are 150 shared cars. So they are used for both mobility, but also for energy storage to charge when it's available. And I think the company even has solar panels on roofs of schools, for example. And I know that right now we cannot buy AC vehicle to grid cars on the market, but they are also coming, maybe as soon as next year. Another interesting example is ELAD has not been involved in this, but Arena, so the football arena in Amsterdam, also have a system where they've put up a lot of solar panels, and they are using car batteries from the Nissan Leaf. So some of these were used car batteries, decommissioned car batteries, and they bought some new car batteries and using that as the battery storage, and have a backup system for if there would be a power outage, but so they can do using those batteries both ways. They don't actually have these batteries in the cars anymore, but it shows that they could also have wheels.
Yeah, maybe not only a question to you, but also if Graham is there and Annabelle is also still there. Yeah, the future, I would say, like, I might think it's bi-directional, because if you look only at the Netherlands, there's, I think I calculated once, it's more than 20 gigawatt hours of energy storage available. Only it's mobile in the Netherlands. And if you look at the challenge we have in the grid, vehicle to grid and bi-directional charging would be a solution. But the question is, are the car manufacturers open and ready for this? Because that would solve a lot of problems, isn't it? Is there any one of you that can comment on that?
I have 2 notes on that. I believe in vehicle to grid, but we've also seen that widespread, so broad adoption of smart charging is more important if we're looking at the grid and using of solar energy. So having a small cluster of vehicle to grid cars means less for the grid and the use of solar power than having widespread smart charging. And in terms of car manufacturers, there are several car manufacturers that are making cars and have plans for putting them in the market in the next few years. Maybe Graham knows more.
Yeah, maybe just a couple of comments to add. I think obviously you're right in that perhaps smart charging delivers 80–90% of the benefit that vehicle to grid does. I think obviously the two ways that this would receive much wider adoption is one, if it helps people save money, which it certainly can, and for two, if it's regulated. So if we mandate people to almost kind of make these adjustments to their home, they make their adjustments to their domestic energy ecosystem, let's say, and they have the vehicle to support it, then of course they will have to. So I think that yeah, in order to mitigate the large upgrades required in certain countries to the power network, we have to almost maybe mandate vehicle to grid. But yeah, from the car company's perspective, any more expensive, heavier technology that they have to fit to the vehicle is of course completely undesirable for their profit margins. So yeah, perhaps we have to somehow mandate them to do this. And but yeah, of course, in terms of the facility of the vehicle, you know, the capability of the vehicle, if this becomes a unique selling point, then of course they need to adopt such technology to keep up with the competition.
Yeah, I could also imagine that there is interesting business models that can be built around that. If you can make your car available as a flexible storage medium, then yeah, you could make some money out of that.
We have Western glasses on, and for us, yes, definitely using it as energy storage is very interesting, and there's definitely a business case if you look at hourly energy prices. But in the US, but also definitely in Africa, Asia, living off grid or living in areas where you have a very unreliable grid situation is the way to power your house.
Yep. Thanks for that. There are still some people in the room that maybe we have time for some more questions. What do you think yeah, are the most important trends that we will see happening next year in this area? That's maybe challenging, maybe too challenging question, but how do you see things?
Maybe I'll have a go. Yeah, I mean, maybe from the automotive side, I mean, obviously, you know, continued adoption of electric vehicles, you know, a greater adoption of electric vehicles with higher power charging capability. You know, the number, let's say the number of the vehicles in the fleet that will be able to charge at, let's say, powers above 150 kilowatt will increase substantially. You know, this is something maybe that we thought of as, again, as something of a kind of premium feature, but when you see car companies like Hyundai offering, you know, up to 350 kilowatt charging capability, we understand that this can be more mainstream, and therefore people will have the demand to have the higher power charging in the public domain. I think what I'm quite excited to see is the more let's say purpose-built, let's say we will call it the service station here in the UK, right? The rest areas on the highway. The idea that these are going to start to become a bit more purpose-built to adopt, you know, to accommodate EVs, you know, respecting the fact that we have longer dwell times, that people need the kind of certain facilities or the ability to pull in and stay there for 5, 10, sometimes 25 minutes to recharge. You know, this type of service station facility is kind of at the pilot stage. There's a couple here in the UK where you can go and have this kind of EV specific experience and charge at high power and have the facilities around you. I think that this would start to become more commonplace, and I think that we need more of these in the right strategic locations to partly because it's needed for charging purposes, but partly also just to encourage people to go out and buy an EV because they see it's possible and that it works.
Yeah. Any comments from your side, Hannah or Annabelle?
Yeah, development for the. Oh, sorry, Annabelle, you go first.
Well, I think in addition, I think what you will also start to see is that OEMs will team up with charge point manufacturers, so that it will become more of an all-in-one package. So with passenger cars, you order your passenger car at an OEM and you buy your charging point domestic at a different place. Also, given the challenges around grid congestion, I think there will be all-in-one packages, which will also, we will see more collaboration between different market parties, I guess.
Hannah, last comments on your side?
Yes, well, looking more towards the energy system, I think in the next year or years, people that have the possibility to charge at home, but maybe this will even be available in public charging stations that you can charge more on hourly rates. It is already quite common in the Nordic countries, and it is starting to come in the Netherlands, because with more solar and wind, the energy prices are fluctuating much more. So that is one way to stimulate smart charging, to stimulate when it is available. We've already had a number of days this year in the Netherlands, and I know in Germany they have it quite often, where the prices are 0 or negative during the day. That's when you want to put it into your car.
Okay, that's bringing you back to the smart charging, right? That's all smart charging. Good. Let's finish this webinar. Maybe a last slide. So just a quick reminder for everyone listening in today that there are 2 more webinars around this very interesting topic coming up next week and the week after. So I thank Hannah, Annabelle, and Graham for participating and sharing their knowledge, valuable experience in this field. Thank you very much for joining here, and all the participants, thank you for joining, and hope to see you next time at one of the upcoming webinars. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.